Rishi Sunak is probably the most intelligent Prime Minister we've had, most decent Prime Minister too, for many, many years.
Presiding Officer, First Minister, party leaders and members of the Scottish Parliament share with me a profound sense of grief at the death of my beloved mother. Through all the years of her reign, the Queen, like so many generations of our family before her, found in the hills of this land and in the hearts of its people a haven and a home. My mother felt, as I do, the greatest admiration for the Scottish people, for their magnificent achievements and their indomitable spirit. My lords and members of the House of Commons, it is mindful of the legacy of service and devotion to this country set by my beloved mother, the late Queen, that I deliver this, the first King's speech in over 70 years. The impact of COVID and the war in Ukraine have created significant long-term challenges for the United Kingdom. That is why my government's priority is to make the difficult but necessary long-term decisions to change this country for the better.
Since the general election, he's the son of...
But if the police decide to issue me with a fixed penalty notice, I would, of course, do the right thing and step down.
Breaking, King Charles has just slammed Prime Minister Keir Starmer on live, unprecedented statement that has thrown the United Kingdom into its biggest political crisis in 300 years. For the first time in modern history, the monarch has openly challenged the authority of the Prime Minister, and what followed was nothing short of political chaos. Parliament is in meltdown, the government is collapsing, and Starmer now faces the most dangerous battle of his career, one that could end not just his leadership, but the future of Labour itself. What really happened between King Charles and Keir Starmer? And how did this brutal clash explode into the crisis that now threatens to tear Britain apart? Here's the full story. It all began with Starmer's explosive comments about the monarchy, words that insiders say King Charles took as a personal attack not just on his role, but on the centuries-old foundations of the crown itself. For days, Buckingham Palace had stayed silent, refusing to respond while outrage spread across the country. But this morning, silence turned into thunder. Standing before cameras at Clarence House, King Charles broke every tradition of royal neutrality and delivered a short but devastating statement aimed directly at the Prime Minister. His words, calm but sharp, sent shockwaves through Britain. The monarchy has served this nation for centuries. It is not the plaything of politics, nor the target of reckless anger. Our institutions are bigger than any one man, even the Prime Minister. Those words were like an earthquake ripping through Westminster. No monarch in living memory has spoken in such blunt terms about a sitting Prime Minister. The reaction was instant and ferocious. Within minutes, opposition MPs were on social media declaring that Starmer's authority was finished. Hashtags like #KingVStarmer and #DefendTheCrown exploded across Twitter, with millions of Brits reposting clips of the King's speech. The press swarmed with headlines. King strikes back, screamed the Sun, while the Telegraph warned of the beginning of a constitutional war. Overnight, the political balance of power shifted, and Starmer suddenly looked like a man at war not just with his opponents, but with the very heart of Britain's identity. Inside Downing Street, panic erupted. According to leaked reports from senior advisers, Starmer was blindsided by the King's public intervention. In a closed-door meeting immediately after the statement aired, Starmer reportedly shouted, "He's broken the Constitution, not me. If the Crown interferes in politics, then the monarchy is finished." Those words, spoken in fury, are already being leaked by insiders who fear Labour is heading toward total collapse. Senior cabinet members were left stunned, with some urging Starmer to back down, apologise and de-escalate the conflict. But Starmer refused, declaring, "I won't bow to a king who thinks he can rule over elected government." That hardline stance has only made things worse. The consequences were immediate. By the afternoon, several Labour MPs were openly calling for Starmer's resignation, saying his handling of the monarchy crisis has humiliated the party and destroyed public trust. Veteran Labour backbencher John McDonnell told reporters, "You cannot win a war against the Crown. Starmer has walked this party into disaster." Even Angela Rayner, Starmer's deputy, has been noticeably silent, fueling speculation that she may be positioning herself for a leadership challenge. For the first time, cracks inside the Labour cabinet are visible to the public, and whispers of a full-blown leadership coup are spreading through Westminster. But perhaps the most devastating blow came from ordinary British voters. A snap poll released just hours after the King's speech shows a dramatic collapse in confidence. 81% of voters said they believed the King was right to speak out, while only 12% supported Starmer's comments. Labour's poll numbers have nosedived to 24%, the lowest in over a decade. In key battleground constituencies in the Midlands and North, support has completely cratered, with lifelong Labour voters turning their backs on Starmer in disgust. In pubs, town halls, and social media feeds across the country, the message is the same: you don't attack the monarchy and survive. Even the international community is reacting with disbelief. Commonwealth leaders are reportedly in private talks, concerned that Starmer's words and Charles's response could destabilise Britain's reputation abroad. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau issued a carefully worded statement about the importance of respecting the Crown, while Australia's Peter Dutton went further, calling Starmer's handling of the situation an international embarrassment. Diplomats in Washington, Brussels, and Ottawa are quietly asking the same question: can Starmer even survive the week? The truth is that Britain has never faced a crisis quite like this. A Prime Minister accused of waging war on the monarchy, a king who has broken centuries of silence to strike back, and a government that looks like it is collapsing from within. The battle lines are drawn. On one side, Keir Starmer clinging to authority and refusing to apologise. On the other, King Charles, calm, silent, no more, and backed by the overwhelming support of the public. The stakes could not be higher, and the question haunting Westminster tonight is simple: who will blink first, the King or the Prime Minister? As the dust from King Charles's thunderous statement settled, Westminster was already descending into chaos. The House of Commons erupted the moment MPs gathered for the emergency session, called to address the unfolding disaster. Starmer walked into the chamber looking pale, tight-jawed, and visibly under pressure. But instead of retreating, he doubled down. Standing at the dispatch box, he delivered a speech that was both defiant and reckless. Britain's future will not be dictated by a monarch. Parliament is sovereign, not the Crown. And no king, no matter his lineage, will undermine the authority of a democratically elected government. The chamber gasped. Even seasoned MPs, hardened by decades of brutal debates, were stunned by Starmer's tone. Some Labour MPs clapped nervously, unsure whether to stand with their leader or distance themselves from what was rapidly being branded as treasonous rhetoric. On the Conservative benches, the reaction was immediate and merciless. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch rose to her feet and declared, "This is not leadership. This is reckless arrogance. The Prime Minister has declared war on the very foundation of our democracy." The chamber exploded in shouts, jeers, and chants of "Resign, resign." The scene was chaotic, unlike anything Britain had seen in modern politics. Outside Parliament, the country itself was erupting. Crowds gathered in London, waving Union Jacks and chanting in defence of the monarchy. Protesters filled Parliament Square, shouting "God save the King," while holding placards branding Starmer a traitor. Police struggled to keep order as counter-protests formed, with a small group of Republican supporters clashing with royalists in heated street battles. Social media became a war zone of memes, videos, and live updates. On TikTok, videos of King Charles's calm but firm words were cut with dramatic music, captioned "The King We Needed." Meanwhile, clips of Starmer's fiery Commoners speech circulated with mocking captions like "Cromwell 2.0. In less than 12 hours, Britain wasn't just facing a political crisis, it was facing a cultural war. Inside Labour headquarters, the crisis was tearing the party apart. Confidential leaks revealed that senior figures were already drafting resignation letters, unwilling to sink with Starmer's ship. Chancellor Rachel Reeves, once Starmer's most trusted ally, reportedly told colleagues she could no longer defend the indefensible. At the same time, Angela Rayner's silence grew louder. She avoided cameras, avoided statements, and avoided Starmer himself. Clear signs she was positioning herself as the natural replacement if the party moved to oust him. MPs who had once praised Starmer's discipline now whispered words like dictator, reckless, and finished. The WhatsApp group, Damage Control, already active during the earlier leaks, exploded with furious messages demanding a new leader. The press fueled the fire. The Daily Mail splashed a front-page headline reading, "Crown vs Commons, who rules Britain?" The Times asked bluntly, "Can Starmer survive this?" And the Daily Express went even further, "Treason in Downing Street." Each headline made it harder for Labour to calm the storm. Television pundits spoke of the end of Starmer's career in real time, some even comparing the crisis to the fall of Richard Nixon. By nightfall, the bookies had already slashed the odds on Starmer's resignation to 2-1, while betting markets placed Angela Rayner as the frontrunner to succeed him. Meanwhile, the king remained silent after his statement. That silence became a weapon. Constitutional scholars debated the implications endlessly on live broadcasts. Was the king stepping too far into politics? Or was he simply defending his institution from unprecedented attack? Public opinion left little doubt. Polls showed overwhelming support for Charles, with approval ratings soaring above 80%. Commentators pointed out that Charles, once mocked as a weak monarch, had transformed overnight into a figure of national strength, while Starmer's image crumbled into that of an out-of-control radical. But what truly sent shockwaves through Whitehall was the intervention of foreign leaders. The White House carefully avoided direct criticism, but made it clear they recognised King Charles as a symbol of stability during uncertain times. Across Europe, leaders who had often clashed with Britain expressed sympathy for the monarchy and disbelief at Starmer's attack. Australia's Peter Dutton, never one to mince words, declared, "Starmer has made Britain a laughingstock." In Canada, MPS openly debated whether Starmer's comments endangered the Commonwealth relationship. The international embarrassment was total, and every foreign headline only deepened Britain's humiliation. As night fell on London, Starmer found himself more isolated than ever before. His advisers urged him to apologise, to walk back his words, to show humility before the crown. But Starmer refused. In a late-night meeting described by one insider as apocalyptic, Starmer declared, "If I go down, I'll take the monarchy with me." Those chilling words revealed the depth of his defiance, but also his desperation. Labour MPs leaked the quote within hours, and it spread across social media like wildfire. To millions of Brits, it confirmed their worst fears. The Prime Minister wasn't just clashing with King Charles, he was threatening the very institution of monarchy itself. The next morning, Westminster awoke to headlines more brutal than ever, protests louder than before, and whispers growing into open rebellion. A government once seen as unshakable now looked ready to collapse under the weight of one man's hubris. And as Britain braced itself for what came next, one terrifying question lingered in every conversation. Was this the beginning of the end, not just for Starmer, but for Britain's centuries-old constitutional balance? The pressure on Starmer reached a boiling point within 24 hours of the King's historic intervention. What began as a storm of outrage was now an outright mutiny within his own party. By mid-morning, 3 cabinet ministers had resigned in protest, citing the Prime Minister's reckless war with the Crown. Transport Secretary Louise Haigh was first, releasing a scathing letter to the press. This government cannot function while its leader tears down the very institutions we swore to uphold. Within hours, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy and Defence Secretary John Healey followed, each resignation hammering another nail into Starmer's political coffin. The exodus sent shockwaves through Westminster. Journalists swarmed Downing Street as rumours spread that half the cabinet was preparing to walk if Starmer refused to apologise to the King. A senior Labour source leaked that a delegation of ministers was already planning to confront Starmer privately, demanding he step aside for the good of the party. One MP described the atmosphere bluntly. It's survival mode. Everyone's thinking about saving themselves now, not saving him. Meanwhile, the opposition seized the moment with ruthless precision. Kemi Badenoch, standing outside the Commons, announced that the Conservatives would table a motion of no confidence in the government. Her words were direct and devastating. This Prime Minister has lost the trust of Parliament, the people and the Crown. Britain cannot afford a leader who wages war on our monarchy. The motion was quickly seconded by Reform UK's Nigel Farage, who added fuel to the fire with a blistering speech that went viral online. When the King defends Britain's heritage and the Prime Minister spits on it, only one of them is standing with the people, and it's not Starmer. In living rooms, pubs and workplaces across the nation, Britons were glued to their screens. Rolling news coverage painted a picture of a government on the verge of collapse. Polls showed catastrophic losses for Labour. Support for the party had cratered to 19%, while Reform UK surged to an unprecedented 22%, a historic high that no minor party had ever reached in modern times. The Conservatives, long divided, suddenly looked united as they hovered around 38%. For the first time in decades, Labour's grip on its core voters was not just slipping, it was shattering. On the streets, the crisis was no longer confined to political debate. In cities from Manchester to Birmingham, marches filled the streets. Tens of thousands turned out waving banners reading, "Defend the Crown" and "Starmer out now." In Liverpool, a group of lifelong Labour supporters staged a dramatic protest, burning their membership cards on camera and declaring they would never vote for the party again while Starmer remained in charge. The footage spread like wildfire online, symbolic of a party being abandoned by its own base. Inside Buckingham Palace, tension ran high, but the king himself remained composed. Palace insiders described Charles as serious, calm, but unwavering, in his belief that he had acted in defence of the monarchy. Advisers quietly warned MPs that the king would not speak again on the crisis, but his silence was now loaded with power. Every hour that passed without a royal statement only deepened the sense that Starmer's fight was against an immovable institution, an institution far stronger than any one man. And yet, Starmer still refused to back down. At a late-night press conference, flanked by only a handful of loyal ministers, he declared, "Britain must move forward, not backward. The monarchy cannot dictate government policy. I will not apologise for defending democracy," but instead of appearing strong, Starmer looked cornered. His voice cracked, his eyes darted nervously, and his speech was interrupted by hecklers shouting, "Traitor," from the crowd outside. The image of a prime minister isolated and besieged became the defining symbol of the night. Then came the bombshell that shook Westminster to its core, whispers of a palace-sanctioned meeting between the king and senior Labour rebels. According to multiple sources, Angela Rayner, David Lammy and Rachel Reeves had been quietly invited to Buckingham Palace for consultations on the crisis. Though unconfirmed, the story broke on Sky News with the headline, "King meets Labour rebels preparing for post-Starmer Britain." The palace refused to comment, but the damage was done. To many, it looked as if the monarchy itself was preparing for Starmer's downfall. The backlash was immediate. Tory MPs erupted in Parliament, demanding Starmer resign before the government collapsed entirely. Reform UK hammered the narrative that Labour was finished. Even neutral commentators admitted they had never seen such a fast, brutal collapse of authority. One senior journalist wrote, "Starmer isn't just losing power, he's losing the legitimacy to govern." As dawn broke over London the next day, the stage was set for the most dramatic confrontation in modern political history. A no-confidence vote loomed, mass protests grew louder, and the whispers of Starmer's resignation were turning into shouts. Britain was no longer asking if the Prime Minister would fall, but when. And hovering over it all was King Charles, silent, steady, and stronger than ever. A monarch who had just reshaped the destiny of his nation by simply refusing to be ignored. The crisis between Keir Starmer and King Charles had reached a boiling point. But what came next stunned even the most seasoned political observers. For weeks, Britain had been holding its breath, watching a government unravel before its eyes. And then it happened. The moment history books will one day record as the breaking point. In a rare and dramatic move, King Charles summoned Starmer to Buckingham Palace. No aides, no cameras, no smiling photographs for the press. Just the monarch and the Prime Minister, face to face behind closed doors. The tension was beyond anything Britain had seen in modern times. For the first time since the days of Oliver Cromwell, whispers of outright conflict between Parliament and the Crown filled every corner of Westminster. The leaks from that meeting came quickly. Sources close to the palace claimed that King Charles, calm but firm, told Starmer in no uncertain terms that his behaviour was destabilising the very foundation of the nation. "You are not above the Crown, and you are not above the people," the king allegedly warned. Starmer, however, didn't back down. In fact, he doubled down. Furious, he is said to have accused Charles of meddling in politics and insisted that he had the right to push his vision, no matter how unpopular. The fallout was immediate. Members of Parliament from across the spectrum began to abandon Starmer, one by one. What began as quiet defections soon turned into a stampede. Labour backbenchers resigned en masse. The opposition demanded a vote of no confidence. Even some of Starmer's closest allies began whispering that his time was up. The Prime Minister, once hailed as Labour's great hope, now stood alone, surrounded only by loyalists too scared or too stubborn to admit the obvious. His government was collapsing in real time. And outside, the people were no longer silent. Across the UK, protests erupted. Crowds gathered outside Number 10, chanting for Starmer to resign. Some carried placards with the King's crest. Others waved the Union Jack, shouting that the monarchy must be defended at all costs. Traitor became the word echoing through London streets, aimed directly at the man who had once promised to unify Britain. The media turned vicious. Every newspaper headline screamed betrayal, chaos, collapse. Starmer versus the Crown dominated every television broadcast. Commentators compared the moment to the abdication crisis of 1936, to the civil war of the 1600s, to the darkest chapters in British history. Never before had a Prime Minister looked so isolated, so desperate, and so finished. And then came the final blow. The palace released a statement, subtle yet devastating. King Charles reaffirmed his unwavering commitment to the stability and continuity of the United Kingdom. Words widely read as a public rejection of Starmer's leadership. The symbolism was unmistakable. The monarch had spoken and the nation listened. Starmer's gamble had backfired spectacularly. His war with the monarchy had not only destroyed his credibility, but it had also pushed Britain to the edge of constitutional collapse. Allies abandoned him, the people rejected him, and the crown had effectively cut him off. The man who once believed he could reshape Britain now faced the end of his career, his government, and perhaps even his legacy. In the end, history will remember this not as the moment Starmer rose to greatness, but as the moment his arrogance brought him down. Britain had faced many crises before, but none quite like this. A prime minister at war with his own king, and a nation left divided, shaken, and uncertain about what comes next. The final question now hangs heavy in the air. Is this truly the end for Keir Starmer, or will he cling to power, dragging Britain deeper into the abyss? One thing is certain, the echoes of this crisis will haunt the nation for generations to come. Thank you.